So, welcome everyone. My name is Adelina Comas Herrera from the Global Observatory of Long-Term Care, and I'm really delighted to welcome you all today. I know some of you are joining very early in the morning or quite late in the evening, so thank you for this. And it's my pleasure to co-host this webinar with Finn Turner-Berry. Just so you know as well, if you landed here, what this is. It's basically a workforce webinar. We're going to look at international research on recruitment and retention. And we're building on a format that was first trialed, I think, at some of the Global Aging Network conferences, which is called the Aging Commons. And it's a collaboration between the Global Aging Network, the National Care Forum, Scottish Care, Ontario Long-Term Care Association, and the Global Observatory of Long-Term Care. So I'm really delighted that you're here today, and I'm going to hand over to Finn to say hello and introduce the first speakers.
Hi, folks. I'm Finn Tennerberry, and thanks, Adelina, for that intro. I am Workforce and Research Lead at the National Care Forum, which is the trade association for not-for-profit social care providers in England. And as you can imagine, I'm very excited about today as it's both workforce and research, so it's going to be brilliant. I'll introduce the first speaker. So the first presentation we've got is Wages, Wellness, and Workplace Culture Matter from Jennifer Jars Artesensi, and she's coming from the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, so all the way from the USA, and it's probably quite early for her. So I think I'll hand over to you, Jennifer. You could pop your slides up and we could get started.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. I hope that my slides are visible now.
Yes.
So, perfect. Good morning. Well, it's morning for me. Good afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. I appreciate you inviting me today. I'm kind of a dork, so I'm really excited to get to talk about a combination of things that are dear to my heart as well. Um, I love supporting older adults, particularly in residential care, and I've come to find that for me, my best way to sort of affect outcomes for them has been to move into the world of preparing college students who are interested in going into being leaders in long-term care residential communities. So I'm gonna kind of dive in here. Before we jump straight into the workforce challenges, I wanted to share a little bit more about me. I mentioned I'm a professor, and my passion has always really been focused on improving quality of life for residents in long-term care. I joked with my department chair at a happy hour one time that my secret goal is to indoctrinate all my students into putting the resident at the center of the business model. Because when I see leaders who do that, I really feel like the business stuff falls into place and you get the outcomes that you're looking for. So a few years ago, I conducted a study looking at what residents, CNAs, and various members of the leadership team believe are the factors that most contribute to resident quality of life. And, as expected, some things aligned, some didn't. But this one domain that everyone was in pretty close agreement on was that relationship between staff and residents is a critical relationship. And those relationships don't have the opportunity to develop if staffing is unstable or if turnover is high. And so that's why tackling workforce challenges matters to me, not just so we can support our staff more effectively, but so that we can ensure resident quality of life. So for this project, we collected a lot of data from almost about 60 nursing facilities. And at each location, we did interviews with 5 CNAs. We tried to get different types of CNAs. So we had some career CNAs, some I want to be a nurse type college student, high school students. We also did interviews with the director of nursing and the nursing home administrator at each location. You might hear me slip into using CNA as terminology, which was the common terminology in my local area, but I'm talking about nurse aides, nursing assistants that do most of the work in residential care. And around here in the United States, they usually have to be licensed or certified on some state level. So we used a mixed methods approach. We asked several open-ended questions so staff could tell us in their own words what they think keeps CNAs in their roles, what they think CNAs are looking for from employers. We also gathered a lot of rating data. We had a 7-point Likert scale and had folks rank retention factors, what they thought would be most important to CNAs. And again, we kind of looked at this alignment data. Before we interviewed these folks, we also had conducted some focus groups to develop an exhaustive list of about 160 distinct staffing practices that organizations and employers said they were using in an effort to try to retain their nursing aid staff. And so we sorted those into categories and tried to assess their utilization and relationship with performance variables as well. I want to tell you a little bit about some of the findings from this project. So you can see the questions that we were asking the nurse aides on the left-hand side. And when we analyzed our qualitative data, we saw that most of the participants, regardless of their role, were acknowledging kind of the usual suspects being related to turnover, wages, staffing shortages, and the difficult nature of the job. But one of the things that was fairly prominent on the CNA's list and probably ranked maybe fifth or so out of sort of the most top 10 things that were mentioned was the work culture. And notably, our administrators and our DONs didn't mention the work culture as a driving factor much at all. And so a couple of other things that we noticed were that there was a lot of consistency between what leadership thought was important to CNAs or what leadership thought was making CNAs stay or leave. But when we asked CNAs, what do you think is causing people to leave? What is keeping you here? What do you think would be the best strategies that your organization should try? There was a lot more variation in their responses, right? So our nursing staff, our frontline staff is not a monolith. They're individual people and they have different things that they're looking for out of their jobs. So there was agreement across everyone that wages and appreciation were important. And you can see that bolded list of several of the other things that rose to the top of what those nurse aides were most interested in. But the items that I underlined particularly because leadership was out of touch on these issues. Leadership understood that CNAs wanted to hear their voices heard, but they weren't as in touch with this idea that CNAs and nurse aides wanted more communication. They wanted to be in the loop. They wanted to understand more what's going on with their residents, what's happening more big picture within the organization. They wanted to feel included, informed, feel like they were a part of the work that was being done. They also talked about wanting practical and emotional support. They weren't talking about, I need my boss to be my therapist. They just want to be recognized, seen, heard as a person. If they share something about you that they're struggling with, they want someone to follow up, remember that you shared that. Practical support was just really referencing that life is hard, adulting is hard, the world is hard, and our frontline caregivers have hard lives, and all of us benefit from additional practical support. So, whether you're feeding them a meal while they're working a full shift, or you offer childcare discounts or childcare on site, or other practical ways to make their lives easier, were all kinds of things that were sort of missed by leadership. And they wanted more education. And this is not the kind of education that we give our CNAs, at least in this country, where they spend 12 hours doing some computer module every year, reminding them how to wash their hands properly. They want education about understanding dementia. They want to know how they can do a better job caring for the people that are in our care communities. So we need to listen to them when they tell us what they want, right? We can look at what our quantitative data showed us too, and it really mirrored a lot of the patterns that we saw with our qualitative data. So the numbers you're looking at here are the average Likert ratings across the 3 stakeholders that we interviewed and across those 18 job retention factors. You can go ahead and just kind of eyeball the data if you like while I'm talking. It certainly supports the idea that wages are important, that a lot of these factors are important. But they weren't the most highly ranked by CNAs. So I highlighted in yellow the Likert ranking. So this was a 7-point Likert scale. And you can see if you just look at wages, like they all understood wages were important. But on a relative scale, the DONs had it ranked higher than everyone. And it was actually, pretty similar between the the CNAs and the administrators. But then if you look at the stakeholders and how highly or low they rate the other factors, it starts to get pretty interesting. The DONs had wages. They thought CNAs would rate wages as the number one highest thing, right? When you looked at what the administrators said, they had two things they thought CNAs would maybe rank higher than wages, having adequate staffing and having a strong, supportive supervisory relationship. But when you look at CNAs, not only did they say wages were important, not only did they say those other two things that administrators said were more important, but they had two other factors that were even more important than those three. Teamwork, having good relationships with their coworkers, right? Good interpersonal working relationships. And then look at that first column, safety on the job, the ability to perform their job safely. And look at the difference between administrators and CNAs. I think maybe we kind of take that for granted as a basic function, but probably there's administrators that aren't in the loop that this lift is broken and that one's locked in a cabinet, etc. Or they're short-staffed and they're feeling unsafe about performing aspects of their job. So when we looked at these things, that really kind of struck the surface for me. And you can see some of these other issues also that were sort of undervalued by leadership that were actually pretty important to the front line. We hear again about education, and then we hear about benefits. Look at these columns here on insurance, time off, retirement. There's major differences between the stakeholders here. And I think that there's some opportunity to address those factors. And guess what? Staff like to work at places that have a quality reputation. They want to feel like they're a part of providing quality care. So that's pretty important to them as well. The final piece of analysis that we looked at, for sake of time, I really just want to focus on the data that you see in the middle. We did analyze the frequencies of all of these strategies. You can use that QR code, or if they have the slides available after, you can get that if you want to see that broader data. But the relationships between strategies and nurse aide turnover were pretty interesting, I thought. So the first two really relate to that onboarding process. The third and fourth items there refer to emotional support, right? I don't really think it's because there's a specific EAP program or bereavement leave that meant that this organization was going to have less turnover, but I think those are proxies for this is the kind of place that cares about their employees and demonstrates that emotional support on a regular basis. And then we saw that when we give our staff more autonomy over their schedule, they appreciate that control and are less likely to leave as well. So some of the take-home messages I would say to walk away from if you are a leader in long-term care looking to shore up your frontline staff, you got to do the basics well. You got to have fair wages. They don't have to be the highest in town, but they need to be reasonable, have a manageable workload, and do a safety audit. That might be your very first low-hanging fruit. And make sure that everyone can do their job safely. Really sink some resources and time into systemizing your onboarding process. Create that sense of belonging and relationship early on. Have that name tag printed when they arrive. You belong here. We're invested in here. We got ready for you. Check in with them periodically. These little touches, these little human touches make a big difference. Providing those kinds of emotional and practical support, like access to transportation discounts or childcare discounts, making a food pantry available a few days before payday for those who maybe need it. Little ways to provide practical support and feed your employees, feed them. That shows care. That's how we take care of people. I'm from the Midwest. That's how we care for people. We bring food. We show up with food. So feed your staff. Prioritize communication and teamwork, and don't underestimate the important role that the leaders play in really driving that entire workplace culture. And then find ways to use technology to give autonomy to the staff, and maybe to your residents as well. So that kind of concludes my general remarks for this morning, for today.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And if there's any question for Jennifer, please add it to the box. And great to see some appreciation also being shown. I think, Finn, would you like to fire your question first?
Well, firstly, thank you very much, Jennifer. It's brilliant research, and it's really helpful to see those five key takeaways for people to go away and implement in their own practice. I suppose from my point of view, it'd be good to understand. So we had some messages for people who are working in care or running care practices. What's your message for policymakers and people who are doing some strategic thinking about what to prioritize? Because to me, from your research, it didn't seem obviously level of pay and wages are important, but it didn't seem to be the only thing that was important. And often pay versus benefits is seen as a competing thing, but are they two complementary things? So those reflections would be helpful.
Yeah. I Pay is definitely an issue, especially in the United States. In long-term care, I would say probably 70% of the residents are having their care paid for through Medicaid programs, which are chronically underfunded. And so there definitely are some limitations on what organizations can do. Um, One of the things that actually correlated with some of our performance outcomes was some organizations have moved to using other types of staff, hospitality aides, or maybe staff that have less training than the nurse aides do that can maybe pick up some of the slack or pick up some of the tasks that don't require that licensure as a way to remove that burden. So I think that from a policy perspective, I definitely think that funding and reimbursement has to have attention paid to it. Um, but I think that beyond that, there may be ways to even think about what roles people play, the regulations that we have dictating who's able to perform what kinds of jobs, what kind of training needs to be done. Because at the end of the day, maybe we can use AI to supply robots to care for people, but I don't think robots are going to be able to make that human connection that's so important to people. So we're
Absolutely.
going to have to strike a balance there.
Yeah, lots to think about for us, particularly in the UK with the upcoming Fair Pay Agreement. Adelina, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'm actually going to pick two questions that we have in the chat. The first is from Nina Catalano, and she's asking whether these differences that you spotted between the CNAs and the managers were due to demographics or other factors. So I'll start with this one, then I'll ask the second one.
Yeah, I've done a lot of this kind of alignment research on perspectives, and I don't think it's necessarily a demographic difference. It could be. But I think in terms of like age, if we're thinking is leadership older and out of touch with a younger caregiving workforce, we had a real variety of ages within that caregiving and generations represented in the caregiving staff and within the leadership staff as well within our sample. So I don't really think that that was a factor. But in this alignment research that I've done, everybody does tend to see the world through their own lens, and we definitely see these degrees of separation. So, the CNAs are most in alignment with the residents, the DONs are oftentimes most in alignment with the CNAs, leadership is a step removed. And so every time you're taking a step back, perceptions tend to diverge. So go to
Thank
the
you.
source. Just go to the source.
And the next question is whether if you could say a bit more about how technology can be used to give more autonomy to staff. From Maritia Navadun. Thank you, by the way, for the question.
Yeah, that's a great question. In this research in particular, we were really just talking about and looking at like scheduling apps that allow people to sort of swap shifts or have more control over their schedule. Um, but as I sort of think ahead to where we're going with AI and other types of technology, I definitely think that there's going to be lots of opportunity to kind of lift the burden. Of course, this is the fantasy, right? Bring the robots in to lift some of the task burden off the CNA so they can use that extra time to engage in conversation and connection with the residents. From a leadership perspective, you have to make sure and maintain that and not just think, oh, now we can get away with less staff because we have, the robots helping out. So there's, I think, potential, but it comes with the risk of how we employ the new technologies. I think that will will be available to help alleviate some of that burden.
Thank you. And I think we'll have to now move to the next speakers. And would you like to introduce them, Finn?
Yeah, absolutely. That was brilliant. I think we're going to now go to creating a workplace where foreign caregivers thrive. And we've got Michio Yoneno Reis from the University of Shizuoka, Japan. Apologies for my awful pronunciation. But have you got your slides up? And then we can take over from there. But again, thank you for joining. I think you said it was quite late in the evening for you, so it's brilliant to have you joining from Japan.
Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm from Japan, which is the evening. Thank you very much, organizers, for inviting me for this wonderful opportunity to share my research findings with you. Okay. So, okay, so this is the question we have today, and okay, jump to the conclusion. I'm gonna answer. This is my conclusion. Okay, Japanese government should shoulder the cost of training of foreign workers, particularly the language, and workplace managers. Training for workplace managers are also proposed to bridge the cultural gaps. Okay, this is the conclusion. Then let us go back to the background. Okay, so I am a cultural anthropologist, and my another phase is ethnomusicologist. So my research approach is usually ethnographic, but for the series of the project related to international migration of care workers, I often employ the life history approach through interviews or in-depth interviews. So I hardly do quantitative research, just like Jennifer presented, but more on qualitative. Okay, and so aside from my academic background, my experience as a language teacher at universities of Japanese when I was in the Philippines and of Filipino when I am back to Japan has nurtured my perspectives on language training for migrant care workers, particularly those who come to Japan from Asian countries. And I myself am a Japanese and spent most of my adult years in the Philippines. So on some occasions, I have been rendering support for the workers, my informants, when they face problems. You know, I accompany them to a lawyer, the negotiation with their employers, etc., etc. Okay, so what I'm presenting today is largely based on the interviews with these people, the Japanese government officials and the Filipino government representatives, DMW is the Department of Migrant Workers, and PRC is the Professional Regulation Commission, the organization that controls the national examination for nurses, among others. Okay. I think I should mention MHLW, Ministry of Health and Labor and Welfare, and GQuels. I forgot. This is the organization that takes care of the foreign care workers coming to Japan. And of course, the workers themselves, I'll explain this EPSSWT. These are the names of the programs through which they enter Japan. And I also have been working with and having interviewed with the the trainers, those who train foreign workers, and some those who are employed or those who are volunteer workers, those who are engaged in training or tutoring foreign care workers in Japan. The background, the second part of the background, there are 5 routes for foreign care workers to enter Japan, which is quite complicated. And by the way, in this presentation, I use this word care workers to mean the English translation of Japanese kaigoshi, which is what? Okay, which is a care worker as an established profession. Okay, which is another confusion. Actually, the notion of care worker or kaigoshi itself is not well understood by foreign care workers before and even after they enter Japan, and that causes sometimes the stress. So one of the advocacy that I've been doing in the past year was to let the government officials and others understand this difference. Okay, so the kaigoshi, okay, one can start for kaigoshi Japanese in Japan. One can start working as a kaigoshi without a license or even with no specific training, but it is usually encouraged to attend, but they are usually encouraged to attend a 130-hour introductory training. I think I should, okay. Okay, introductory training course. And after that, okay, this is the route for foreigners. But those who come to Japan from other countries, they have to pass the several tests before coming to Japan. That is equivalent to the introductory training, 103 hours. Then after, and they work for 3 years. Then after that, they will be allowed to take the practical training, which is 450 hours. And after that, they will be allowed to take the national examination to be a licensed care worker, which then they will be called certified care worker. And once they become a certified care worker, then they can establish their own career as a care worker to a higher level. Okay, when we say foreigners to retain foreign workers, care workers, which means they have to pass this national examination, then they can stay in Japan more or less for good. And otherwise, they have to return to their respective home countries after 5 years or so. So the question comes when the challenge for employers to retain them is at what stage? Okay, first they have to retain them for 3 years. So that they will be ready to take this practical training. And the another challenge is to let them pass the national examination so that they can have them forever. So there are different stages. By the way, so 2000, we began to accept them, then, but it is only in the 2010s that many different systems emerged. And okay, and as you see, the number of foreign care workers did increase rapidly in the 2010s, and after the pandemic, it did increase more rapidly. In terms of the nationality, Vietnamese are rapidly increasing, while Chinese and the Filipinos are steadily increasing. Indonesians catching up, and Myanmar and the Nepalese are also slowly catching up. Okay, by the way, what I'm saying here is going to be included in this article that will come out hopefully within this year. Okay, so how can long-term care providers retain good workers while supporting quality of life for both staff and those they serve? I cannot talk about the patients since I have no data about that, and also I have to also question again. Good workers and quality of life means differently at their different stages, and retain again how long. Yes, is that a matter of 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years, or 10 years, or 20 years? Okay. Okay. Anyway, what matters is I generally agree with Jennifer. It is the wage and what the culture and wellness. But for Japan, for the foreigners working in Japan, first was really the language and workplace culture. And these two are the highlighted because this is most crucial. Personality, character of workers, yes, but which like kind of beyond the control. So if you really if you are not really meant for care work, you leave. Okay, you cannot do anything. Sometimes the educational professional background of the workers do matter. If that do not match with what they had expected or what they do, perhaps we cannot do anything. And the wage and welfare matter as they stay longer. Okay, for the language, okay, they enter Japan at this level, somewhere in between A1 and A2. But for them to pass the licensure examination, they have to be somewhere here between B1 and B2. And for them, but this is just for the passing of the license. And does not mean that that is enough for them to become a kind of good or the perfect care worker. So they are really expected to continue developing their language skills, and which is most crucial and which is expensive, but few facilities would have the capacity. At this moment, what is happening is to put the responsibility of training them to the facility. And the many facilities is like giving up. So that's why my conclusion is it's the Japanese government responsibility to shoulder the cost of training for foreign workers. Among the EPA programs, the government to government program, yes, the Japanese government is investing more than the other programs, but still, that kind of government support should be expanded to those who enter Japan through private agencies. And I had no time to explore more about this cultural workplace culture misunderstandings, but the workplace managers training is also proposed. The last weekend, I just attended a seminar on that, and these nurses were proposed. I mean, there were a good movement that among some concerned nurses trying to develop some program on this. Okay, I think this is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michio. That's brilliant, and lots to for us to think about in our own context, particularly around migration. So well done. Adelina, do you want to come in with a question first, or shall I go ahead?
Go ahead, and then yeah.
Absolutely. So firstly, just a reflection, it's great to see some ethnography in social care research. It's really great to hear that and to see some reflexivity in it all. I suppose my question is there are many I suppose around Europe particularly, but I suppose around the rest of the world, lots of pushbacks against migration from a national policy making perspective, and one of the most difficult things, I guess, to pitch is getting the government to pay for language training for staff. I wonder whether that is something you're also experiencing in Japan, and whether there are any arguments that you are operationalizing or making that might help us to think about the same kind of arguments at home.
Okay. Okay. Among among oh, among these 5 routes, there are, let's say, 4 group, or there are because there are 4 programs, and this EPA, the G2G, government to government program, is largely supported by the government. So we have a certain model on it. And by the way, I'd like to mention that this program was crafted based on the Philippine laws. Okay, the Philippines has several laws in sending out their workers outside and to protect their rights. The Philippine law says that the cost for training should be paid by their employers. So in the bilateral negotiations between the Japanese government and the Philippine government in crafting this program, the Philippine delegates were bound by their own laws. So that did to take effect. Okay, so in crafting this program, they were forced to make that Japanese government should shoulder the cost for the Japanese language, at least since this is the government to government. But for others, when they are mediated by private mediators, then for Filipino workers, again, the same law applies. So it is the employers who shoulder the cost. While if the employers would like to get foreign workers from other countries, they put the cost to the workers. They will make them the debt to the workers and let them pay. But that is not sustainable. It is there are data that the Filipinos have a much stable way of staying in Japan and far fewer cases of disappearance. So I think the data is showing that this Philippine system is kind of working. Now, what is happening now is that, the more then this TITP program is going to be changed by next year or so. So this TITP, that's new TITP, is also going to apply the similar principle. Again, it is the employers who should pay the cost. Now, I would see that these facilities or the employers would not like to spend. So now the question goes to who shoulders this cost? So that's why my team is proposing that it should be the government. At least we do have this model. Then that should be expanded. Now also we are trying to make use of the online materials, materials. The opportunities so that it won't be very expensive, that one teacher should come to teach language to 10 people. No, we are not going to do that. Once we're going to make use of the technology, the cost should not be too huge, but that at least that cost should be shouldered by the government. That is my advocacy. And yes, it's still a long way to go, but we're trying.
Thank you so much, Michi.
Thank you, Michi.
There are two questions, but we'll need to have very quick answers so we have time for the next speakers. The first one is asking about the importance of culture, of learning about culture as well as language, and to understand also the cultural context in which care is delivered. So you're going to give a quick answer and then we'll go for the next one.
Yes. Usually the notion of contract is different. Japanese companies usually do not have a very clear notion of contract. Surprisingly, other Asians do have a more Western type notion of a contract, which the Japanese societies, the companies do lack. They respect the sense of respecting privacy. That is something sometimes problem. It becomes an issue. What else? Then the concept of time. Okay, that is also different. Those are the things that I would say the cultural gaps that they do experience. that's why I'm saying that both the employer side should also have an understanding of those cultures background of their employees, and the employees also should also learn the Japanese culture, workplace culture on those. Thank you.
That's a question from Liz Once Murray. Thank you very much. And the next one is from Vic Rayner, and she's asking whether care workers are seen as a special case or whether this approach also happens to international workers in other sectors.
Okay. I'm not sure about the other sectors because I'm too much focusing on this. Well, uh, well, perhaps the cultural aspect may be more or less similar, while the language, I'm not sure because let's say kaigoshi, it's a kind of as an emotional labor. It requires more linguistic skills than other sectors like construction or the cleaning of buildings, etc., etc. Factory workers, agriculture. Yeah.
And very briefly, I see from Emi Masaki, she's asking, and it's something you mentioned about people kind of disappearing or leaving the sector. Do you have data on how many migrant care workers return to their countries?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have that particular figures for that. I'm very sorry.
And thank you. No, that's all right. And I'm sure we'll at some point we can also get more into this topic in later webinars, because I think this is a discussion of international importance. It's a challenge for all countries. And it was also a challenge for the countries who are sending workers, and how to find good ethical ways of doing this. I think is something that international organizations should really be getting together in thinking and bringing together best practice. Finn, do you like to introduce the next speaker?
Absolutely. Thank you, Michio. Right, so on to our final speakers. We've got Iria Cunha and Rena Devi from University of Leeds, and they'll be presenting the Reach Realist Review, which is recruiting and retaining nurses and frontline care workers in long-term care. So Rena, Iria, please do pop your slides up. I can see you're already halfway there. And take it away.
Thanks so much, Finn. Sorry, our slides are just loading. Can everyone see the screen?
We can see the screen. They're just taking a bit of time to pop up, so we'll just wait until.
Yeah.
For those of us who have joined us in the rehearsal, they loaded immediately.
It was, yes.
This is how it's supposed to show.
How it all works, isn't it? Gremlins, tech gremlins, they're getting into the wires. All right. There we are. Brilliant.
Yes.
Okay, take it away, Rena and co.
Yeah. Okay, thanks so much for inviting us to speak and join this webinar. So I'm Rena Devi. I'm an associate professor at the University of Leeds in the UK, and this is my colleague, Iria. And we're going to be sharing the findings of a study where we've developed evidence-based strategies for supporting recruitment and retention in care homes, and we'll describe how we've translated those findings into an accessible format for practice. So when we think about how to sustain the workforce, I'm sure the audience here would agree that one silver bullet isn't going to help solve this. And there are many reasons why. So firstly, the way that staff experience their work will be influenced by many different factors. As we've already heard from Jennifer, there's so many things that influence this. For example, do staff feel valued at work? Do they have supportive peers? If they need flexible working, is that need met? Secondly, across the sector, there are lots of different types of settings, and the way that staff work across settings vary, and that variation needs to be considered. And thirdly, the sector employs a really large and diverse workforce, so we need to be mindful that different staff groups will have their own set of needs, wants, and expectations from work. And so my key message for this slide is when we're thinking about how to sustain the workforce, we need to be developing multiple and tailored solutions that can take all of this complexity into account. And at the University of Leeds, we've worked on this. So we've carried out a literature review which used a realist approach to identify real practical ways that care homes can support and improve staff recruitment and retention. And with using a realist approach, we've been able to provide explanations around how strategies work, for which staff groups, the specific conditions needed and the costs involved. And as you can see on the slide, there were 4 key steps to our project. It looks nice and linear on the slide, but there was some back and forth between steps. So in step 1, we interviewed frontline staff, we consulted with sector-wide stakeholders, and we carried out a scoping literature review. We brought that data together to identify practical strategies and develop draft explanations which can help explain how and why these strategies work. Stakeholders prioritised which strategies they wanted us to build on and develop in the rest of the project, and those are listed there in step 1. In step 2, we went back out to the literature, carrying out more focused searches for evidence. We included 153 papers and extracted information from those papers and used that information to refine and develop the initial findings that we had from step 1. And with using a realist approach, sector involvement is a really key part of that. So frontline care home staff, managers and HR staff were part of the process, helping to shape and refine the findings, and gave us that grounding and checking that this is actually relevant and makes sense in practice. And through the process, there was quite a lot of overlap with the strategies in step 1. So some of the strategies could be collated together. And so we finished with these 5 key strategies, and I'll provide an overview of these strategies and how they interact and work together to support staff recruitment and retention. So the first message is that staff retention starts really early on, right at the recruitment stage. And when interviewing job applicants, there were 2 key components to this. So it's assessing how suitable is this person for care work by assessing their values. And secondly, setting clear and accurate expectations of what is involved in care work. And there were different examples in the evidence around how to enable this. So one nice example was involving residents, their families, and frontline staff in the interviewing process. This helped with setting expectations of what care work involves, but also supporting with assessing, is this person suitable for care work? Another nice example was showing job applicants around the care home environment. This helped to, again, set expectations, what is involved in this type of work. And what this is doing is helping build confidence, both for the person applying for this job. They can be confident at this stage, this job definitely isn't for me, or actually this looks really good, I'll give this a go. But also confidence for the employer. This person seems like someone suitable for care work, or they don't. And the outcome here is that you have new recruits who understand the job role. And for all of this to work in the way that I'm describing, it's really key that the applicant has a professional and warm welcome to the care home, where they feel they're starting to build a connection already with that care organisation. And then once a new recruit starts work, the other 4 strategies come into play. So firstly, career development opportunities. We've already heard how important this is from the other presentation. So we all know how skilled care work is and how physically and emotionally demanding this is. So it's so important to have staff prepared for this work. And this is provided through structured and comprehensive inductions. And once the staff member is inducted, continuing with learning through formal courses and on-the-job learning. And for more established staff, this might mean providing opportunities through mentoring more junior staff. And with reward and recognition, this strategy is focused around providing staff with positive reinforcement, listening to staff, supporting their mental well-being, but also finding ways of offering financial reward, such as additional paid leave, support with childcare costs, employee discount cards, and where possible, salary increases also. Caring conversations, this strategy is all about having support through informal and regular conversations with senior staff. And this strategy helps staff because they can share any concerns and seek support around and addressing any concerns that happen in the moment and get constructive feedback on how to deal with those concerns. And final strategy here is work-life balance. So this is offering flexible working options for staff who need it. For example, staff who may have a health condition and need to work, for example, a shorter shift, or staff who have caring responsibilities outside of work. And so what is all of this helping to achieve? So these 4 strategies, they collectively help to ensure staff feel listened to, respected and valued, which then leads to an increase in job satisfaction. And for all of this to work in the way that I'm describing, there were 2 fundamental conditions needed. It's imperative that staff feel that the leadership within the organisation is supporting and enabling these strategies to happen, but also staff feel that these strategies are applied in a really inclusive way, one where everyone has equal opportunities and it's not for a selected few members of staff. And with the method that we used, a final part of the project was to look at more established theories to sense check what we found and seeing whether it makes sense in the wider literature. And so if you remember back when I was describing staff being interviewed, a key part of that was setting accurate expectations. And the reason that's so important is because really early on, the staff member is already starting to develop a psychological contract. And it's important that that contract is fulfilled and it's not based on expectations which can't be managed later on. And then with providing the other 4 strategies that are listed on the right-hand side of the slide, these are helping staff feel supported and empowered. And also they're providing a positive experience. And with the social exchange theory, when we receive a positive experience, we're more likely to reciprocate through. And in this context, that means reciprocating with loyalty and commitment to the organisation and therefore staff staying. So I've given a really brief overview of the findings, but we describe these in a lot more detail. The final report is nearly ready to be published and it will be out next month, and we're just going through the final proofreading of that report. And it was a report written for the funder, and it is around about 100 pages, so it's not that accessible. And so a key next step was translating the key findings for non-academic partners, i.e. our care homes, who these findings are for. So I'm just going to pass to Iria now, who's going to talk us through how we translated the findings.
Hi, hello. I'd like to be brief. I'm looking at the time. Hi, so my name is Aria. I'm a research trainee now here at the University of Leeds, but I used to be working in the care homes as a wellbeing and dementia lead. I've worked in care homes for 10 years, and I was also part of my role practice linking PIN with Niche Leads, which is a partnership between care homes and academia. And so as the practice linking PIN together with the scientific linking PIN, which was researcher Rina, we would connect research and practice. And particularly for this project. So when Rina and the team had the findings, it was important to ensure that the practice was also involved at the stage of translating the findings. So having this final report of 100 pages, we thought we needed to make it more accessible, engaging, and definitely less than 100 pages. So I actually promoted the connection and the engagement of relevant people in practice to be involved at this stage. Next slide. So how to make the translation of the findings? One of the outputs of niche leads is create a know-how, which basically is an easy read, practical document accessible for practice. And in this case, the rich study know-how would be created through a co-production process. And how was this co-produced? So because the topic was about staff retention and recruitment, it would make sense to have HR managers of the different care homes involved. So we created a co-production group that would include myself, Rina, and also 7 HR staff members from different care homes across Yorkshire. And this lasts more or less 4 months. So I would be arranging meetings, workshops in the hybrid mode, which I thought it was really important because give opportunity for everyone in different locations to be part. But since I would be always in one of the homes and Linda possibly would be in a different one, it was really good to build the relationship of the group. Also, then at each meeting, we would discuss and propose any amendments of the document that we're creating. And we discussed 3 main topics, which were content, the language, and the design of the document. In terms of the content, it was about extracting key messages from these 100 pages. And it was really interesting because actually HR member staff, they thought that some content would be very relevant for the HR, other content maybe for managers or even frontline care staff. And also maybe methods wouldn't be really needed to be included in this document. It was also about ensuring that the language would be accessible and easy read, and also the design of the document. What could be the size, what would be a good number or in terms of pages, color, document that should actually maybe available to be printed in the homes if they need it. So having all these discussions in between meetings, me and Rina, we would make the amendments needed, bring it to the next meeting so that everyone could have their input again until we had a final document that everyone was happy with. And the final document, here it is, the rich study know-how. So this document will be given in a digital format to all the care homes, but it would also be ready and they would print according to what they thought it would be needed to print. And if you'd like a copy, please email Vina, that will be available. So that's for me, very short presentation.
I'm aware of the time, so I'll just quickly wrap up. So we've addressed an international priority in the study. It's the first time that evidence has been reviewed with a realist approach. We've put forward key strategies which are practical for care organisations. It may not be surprising to people who know this workforce very well, and what it was intuitively known has now been supported with a really large evidence base. And because we did such a comprehensive review, we've exposed where there are gaps in our knowledge. For example, how to attract, recruit and retain more men into care work and also younger people. And at the University of Leeds, we're working on addressing existing gaps. Just to quickly acknowledge, this was done as part of a wider team. National Care Forum were a big part of the study, and also relatives of people living in care homes. So just to highlight that collaborative work in there, and acknowledging our funder, and please get in touch for if you've got any questions, and also follow us on social media, and the report will be out literally within the next couple of weeks. So if you click on the QR code, that will take you to our NIHR page, and the report will be found there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rina and Nidia. We don't really have time for questions, unfortunately, but you will be sharing the report as you explained. We will also be sharing a video of this webinar. We'll put it, we put the link on the chat. It will be hosted in the GoLTC website, but we can also share it with the other partners. And we are able to add any links to publications and slides to the post so that you can also find that all in one place. I think this has been an amazing webinar. I really would like to congratulate all the speakers. It's been amazing to see all the threads that come through in very different parts of the world, very different styles of research and questions. And I don't know, Finn, if you want to have a last word, but from me, Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody who's been behind the scenes helping make this happen, like Shannon, Verena, Victoria, Nick, Civic Rain is also here. And of course, my co-host Finn. Want to say the last word?
No, thank you very much for everyone. Really, really interesting. And I think there's a lot for us to go away and think about in terms of how we can incorporate evidence in our arguments, both to government, but also in our practice, day to day in social care, and wider long-term care, depending where you are in the world and what you call it. So, just to thank everyone for giving up their time today and coming along, and look out for future global webinars. We're going to be doing this. So yeah, really excited to keep going and with this program.
Yeah, see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
folks.
Bye.